Hey everybody, welcome to the first, or I guess 0th part of the Godot game tutorial for complete beginners. Godot is a free and open source game engine that is very good to start out with. It's good for beginners, but it's still very good when you want to start doing more advanced stuff also. So this is the website, it's just go.engine.org. I have in another tab the license, so if you're curious about the open source freeness of it, it talks about how just permission is hereby granted free of charge to any person with a copy of the software to deal in the software without restriction, including without limitation, the rights to use, copy, whatever. So it's talking about how you can do whatever you want. You can even sell the Godot editor itself, just as long as you keep a copy or a link to this page. Where does it say it? Somewhere over here. Godot developers consider that a link to this page in your game documentation or credits would be an acceptable way to satisfy the license terms. So big plus for Godot. You can do whatever you want with it. You're not going to get sued. So the first thing you want to do if you're getting started with Godot, obviously, is go to this web page and then go to download. It'll take you to this page. So Godot 3.2.1 is the latest at the time of this recording. 3.2.2 is almost out, but not quite yet. And then you have a couple of options over here. You don't really care about the mono version if you're a complete beginner. That's, of course, adding C# support, which we're not going to be doing in this tutorial. We're just going to do the standard version, and then, of course, pick 64 or 32-bit, depending on your system. I'm going to do 64-bit. I already have it downloaded, but that's what you would do. And then it'll just open up in a zip file, and you could extract that to your desktop. So I guess I will do it. So 64-bit downloads a zip file here. Only 27 megabytes. You don't have to make an account. You don't have to install it or anything. It just downloads the executable, and you can run that. So File Explorer, downloads. You have this. You just drag this application out of the zip folder into your desktop. I already have it, so I'm not going to do it. But that's how you would do it. You would open up your program. I have a bunch of projects here already, but if you're new to Godot, it would be blank, and it would ask you if you want to download examples from the asset library. Just say no, we're not going to do that right now. And then the first thing you want to do is say new project. It gives you a bunch of options. So we're going to say Godot tutorial, and then you could pick a path, and you need to be in an empty folder, so you want to pick your path first, and then you just say create folder. I'll create a folder in that directory where you selected here. So you'd automatically created one with the same as the project name. And then you can choose your renderer. There's descriptions here. You can change it later, but you might need to change some things. So ES3 is higher quality, all features, but not so good on older hardware or for web. GL ES2 is better for lower visual quality. Not all features are available, but it works on almost everything, and it's better for web games. So we're going to do 3 for this program, but if your system does not support 3, you can do 2. We're not going to be exploring any of the things in 3 that are not available on 2. So now you're going to be greeted with the full editor. I'm going to quickly go over this. This over here is the scene hierarchy. Right now it's empty. It's just giving us some options to start creating our scene. We're not going to do anything with it in this episode. We're just going to go over the editor and how to use the interface. So you can toggle up here. There are 2 tabs. There's scene and there's import. This is when you import files. You can change some of the settings. For example, if you're importing pixel art, you would need to tell it not to alias the sharp edges of the pixels. You would need to tell it that it's pixel art and that it should not display blurry. That's just one example of what you could do with import. Down here you have your file system. All of your files for your projects will be inside your res folder. Every Godot project starts out with 2 files. You have your icon.png. You'd see it if I double click it, it opens up here in the inspector. It gives me some information about that file. And then you have your default environment.tres. So Godot uses a few proprietary formats. TRES is one of them. It stands for text resource. You could also have .res, which is a binary resource. They serve the same purpose. You just interact with them in different ways outside of the editor. So TRES It's just a resource file. It's a default environment. So over here, it stores a lot of information. You have all these options you can change. I'm not going to go into it right now, but that's for 3D, so we're not going to be using it right now. This is your file system, and of course your inspector. It'll give you information about files down here. It'll also give you information about nodes up here. We'll get into that later, but if you create data in your scene, for example, if you have a character, it'll give you information about that character over here. And then you have node, which we're not going to go into right now. Right now it's empty because that only applies to if you have a node selected over here. That is good for signals and groups. So you can, it's kind of like tags in Unity, a group, where you can just give it, you add a node to a group, and then you can access all nodes of that group out of your entire scene, or that are part of a different node. I'm not explaining it very well, but it'll make more sense when we get into it later. In the center, you have your viewport. Right now, it's empty. It says empty because we didn't save a scene yet. That would be a tscn file, which we didn't do yet. So right now, basically, it means that anything in here is not saved in a file. So right now it's in 3D mode. You can also change the viewport to 2D mode or to script mode. So you can edit scripts in here once we get to that. Asset library also is for downloading some of those examples or some community-made plugins and stuff like that. We're not going to be doing that right now. Down here you have output, debugger, audio, and animation. There are others that are not appearing right now. They'll appear when you need them. When you click on something that is related to them, the option will appear down here. So for example, if I say output, it'll give me some information. As you run your program, you can tell it to print different statements to the output. For example, if you run into a problem and you don't know what the problem is, you could tell it under certain conditions, write some text down here, and you can know that those conditions are being met. Debugger is used for similar things. It'll tell you if an error occurs, it'll tell you where in your code that happened. This is good for audio, and this is good for animation. The animation player in Godot is very strong. You can animate just about every property and have it in this visual editor right here, which is not active right now. Okay, so just to get started, we're not going to be creating anything really this episode. I just want to show some examples. So if I create a 2D scene right now, this is a node 2D. You can see the information about that node in the inspector. You can change different things. So right now you can see it's right there. If I change the position to say 50, it moves 50 pixels to the right. I can do the same with Y, or I can reset it here. Scale, rotation, that's pretty obvious. Z-index refers to how it's being displayed. So if you have multiple nodes, how should they be displayed on top of each other? Like if you have the ground and you have a tree, the tree should be displayed on top of the ground. So that's what Z-index would be used for. But as you can see here, you have things under node 2D, which is what we created here. But then you also have things under canvas item and node. That is because Godot is very object-oriented, which if you're new to programming, you don't really need to understand what that means. A better way to explain that would be when the creators of Godot designed the system, they made it so that a lot of functionality is being reused among different bits that you can use in the engine. So node 2D is the most basic type of 2D node. It just has a transform and a z-index. But it also inherits all the information from canvas item, which in turn inherits everything from node. Every node in Godot inherits from type node. So when they created Godot, they created something called a node, which has a few properties. It has a pause mode, which we don't need to understand right now, and we have a script property, which you can add some behavior to it. And then all elements of your games are going to need those properties. So for example, canvas item needs to have all this stuff too. So canvas item is going to inherit from node. So canvas item has all the functionality of node, and then it also has material property and visibility property. And then node inherits from canvas item, which inherits from, node 2D inherits from canvas item, which inherits from node, so that it has a transform, a z-index, and then all of the things that a canvas item and a node has. So if I come over here, I can add a child node of this. So right now, the root of my scene is a node 2D, and I can add as a child of it with this plus sign a sprite. So if I want to find that, these are all the nodes available in Godot. They're also illustrated like this through the inheritance. So node 2D is obviously what we have here. But if we want a sprite, we can hit this drop-down arrow, and all of these things inherit from node 2D. So they all have a transform and a z-index, and then they have more stuff that makes it unique. So for example, if I come down and I want to find a sprite, it's probably right in front of my face. Okay, right here. Sprite. General purpose sprite node. A sprite is like an image. So if I double click that, or if I hit create here, it'll create a sprite as a child of my node 2D. So my sprite, it doesn't have a lot of information in it right now because I just created it, but as you can see, it has all of the properties of a node 2D, a canvas item, and a node, because here it's under node 2D, which means it inherits from node 2D. It's of type node 2D, more specifically, it's a sprite. I can add, if I come down to my file system, I can just drag my icon.png into the texture, and now you can see it being displayed in my viewport. So the sprite now has a new texture, which is this image. I can add, or I can change these properties to it, and I can change the properties of node 2D. So I can still change, I'm just dragging here, or I can put in a number. I can make that 50, so now this sprite is 50 relative to its parent. So if I change node 2D, see, it is at 0, but if I change it to 10, so now node 2D is 10 from the origin, which is the top left, and the sprite is 50 relative to that point. So I'm just going to reset that, and I'm going to reset that. Nope, not that. Control Z, I'm going to reset that. That's kind of the basics of the structure of it. I don't think I'm explaining it very well. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, but yeah, it has some other options here. You have some stuff up here. So right now you're in select mode. You can also change to using the Q, W, E, R. Well, R is over here. You can Q, W, E. You can change between these options. So this is move mode. Right now I'm going to select sprite, and then I can move it around. Control Z. I can rotate it. Control Z. I can scale it. I can also grab these points, scale it like that. There are various other options here. I'm not going to explain them all right now. You can say Control S. I'm going to save it. It automatically saves with the name of whatever the root node is, but I can change it. I can just change it to game, and it's going to save in my res directory, and it's going to save as game.tscn. So now, if I double click on that from any point, it'll open it up in my viewport. And then if I just press the F5 key, or if I hit this plus, it needs a main scene. So if you press F5, it's going to start the program from the beginning, but it doesn't know what the beginning is. So if you say select, you just tell it that the beginning of your game is going to start at this scene. And then when I run it, I have it all the way up in the corner because it's at a position of 0, 0. So if I just move it over here, hit F5, now it's in the center, or close to the center. Right, that's kind of the basics of how the interface goes, how the interface works, but I will upload at around the same time another video which is going to explain how to do stuff with this, how to actually use it. So this is the basics of just how to navigate the Godot engine. And as you can see, when I ran the game, it said in the output, debugging process started, gave me some information, and then when I stopped it, it says debugging process stopped. So, alright, so I guess we'll go a little further in the next video. Alright, goodbye.